Welcome to the KayaCast, the podcast for cannabis businesses looking to launch, grow, and scale their operations.
I know a little bit about your background. You worked for Intel, massive semiconductor place. Then you transitioned over into marketing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that marketing background has served you well in your cannabis journey. But starting a cultivator without any background in that, what made you decide to do that instead of a dispensary where that seems like it's within the realms of kind of what a normal person would be familiar with?
Yeah. So, years and years ago, so a very long time ago, now almost 25 years ago, I owned an e-commerce company and ran that for 10 years while my kids were little. And so that was not, in-person retail, but it was still retail. And after 10 years of being on the e-commerce side and figuring out how to build systems that really keep customers happy and provide customers with what they need, I realized that I wanted to be a little bit higher up the supply chain. The challenges are different, but having that customer focus is really important for retail, but I wanted to do something different.
Got it. So you decided to come up the value chain and solve different problems and have different problems. What was that journey like? You started cultivation. I don't know where to start.
It was really just on luck. We got an opportunity to buy some property, so we bought 30 acres and really didn't even have a plan. In business school, as working on my MBA, you're always taught, have a business plan, have, the next 5 years all figured out. But that's not what we did. And so we just kind of like rolled the dice and bought some property, built a building, and we figured it out along the way. So certainly don't advise that. But what was important for us is having the right people on our team. And the right people that we had on our team initially are not the same people that are on the team today. So we've learned, like, some people don't have the ability to grow with the business, and that's fine. But it really was just having the right people and being able to think on the fly.
Yeah, that's an understatement, having the right people. And I find as though as an entrepreneur, you change too.
Yeah.
Your role in the business. And I'm sure that when you first started, you were the jack of all trades. You started most of the projects and you had your toes dipped in everywhere. How did you begin to learn what is required to start cultivation and to manage a cultivation site?
Yeah, so it's you're totally right. Where I am today is not at all where we started. When we very first started, my intention was to be the silent partner. Kind of the behind the scenes, managing the money, managing the business, compliance, that sort of stuff. And we had someone who was managing the cultivation side and then another partner who was doing the sales. And we learned pretty quickly that we needed to make some changes on the cultivation side. So brought in some new people and that team has changed over. And the longer I've been in the business, the more I changed from being the silent partner to being the loud partner. I feel kind of like I'm the one who's out there. Clearly we're talking today. I have no hesitations at all about telling people I'm in the cannabis business and, hey, this is what I do. But it's taken a long time to get there. So I get the journey that the advocates have put in for years and years trying to normalize the plan. But to answer your direct question about building a building and how we do it, we're fortunate that we have someone on our team who's an engineer. So all the systems are designed properly with what we need and inexpensively. So we didn't have to go out and hire consultants. So all of that on the cultivation side, we know how to do that in-house. And then with my business background, I know how to set up all the financial systems and monitor things from a business perspective. So we just use our skills and talents and put it all together and hope for some magic.
What was the recruiting like to find your head of grower and that side of the equation? Because they're a unique
so
breed.
Hard. Oh, it is so hard. And it's one of the more important decisions. If you don't have the right fit, like for any key person on your team, if it's not the right fit, it can really drag you down. So it's taken us a couple iterations, and I'm not going to knock the people who brought us here because we wouldn't be here without the other people that have helped us along the way. But recruiting is hard because as you know, I'm sure you know from being in the industry for so long, there's a lot of people who appear to be something that they're not. So figuring out who is legitimately telling you the truth versus who's just blowing smoke. And it's hard. So what we chose to do is to reach out to some of our key partners in the Oregon market, distributors who see a lot of flower and who see a lot of farms and who kind of know people on the distribution side. We said, hey, we're looking, whose flower do you see that looks really nice? Because, you know, the craft indoor farm, we have to have really high standards. And so we just kind of put like, whose flower, not even saying that we're recruiting a person, but which farms grow the best flower. And then, you know, we started our recruiting process there.
Oh, wow. That's brilliant. That's really brilliant. When you, looking back now, and I do this exercise all the time, and it's really helpful for me, but also helpful for everybody that's listening. What were some of the initial mistakes that you made when you're starting your cultivation business that you would, you know, now you would do things completely different?
So many, so many. The first thing is on the physical design. The person who was running the cultivation initially had only grown in their, and this sounds so bad, like you think about this mistakes we make, right? But he had only grown in his parents' basement, so, or in his parents' barn. So that's all he knew was kind of small scale cultivation facility. Like the vision of having an actual production facility just completely escaped him. So our first rooms were built very small because that's what he was used to. And looking back, so all of our subsequent rooms have been much bigger, but it's one of these things that, well, you don't know until you know. And then also we're able to use those rooms for R&D now. So if we need to isolate something or put something in quarantine, we can use those smaller rooms. So we take what could have been a mistake and we just make something good out of it.
Yeah, that's it's interesting. It's interesting you say it's really the people at this stage of the business. And in the beginning, when I can imagine you don't really have a business until your first crop as a cultivator, right?
Yep, until you've sold it and collected the cash on the first
Yeah.
crop. Got to have a cash in the bank.
So how did you, I mean, you have a numbers background and you probably budgeted this in terms of, when you first start, you don't know how much you're going to produce, how much of it is there going to be mold, how much do you have to throw away, all of those things that you factor in. What was that journey like?
Boy, I haven't thought about those years in so long. But, you know, talking about the first harvest, and this is going to sound so funny, but, or maybe not funny, but it sounds bad. I'm sharing things with you I don't normally share. So hopefully people enjoy it. But our first harvest, my cultivator had quit. He up and left, refused to answer any texts or emails. Stuff was ready to get harvested like in 2 weeks. And I am not a cultivator. I've never pretended to be. I know just enough to be dangerous and just enough to be somewhat competent, but I'm not a cultivator. But here we were in there watering crops by hand, going in every single weekend, every day, making it happen, figuring out how we're going to harvest, like the whole process. And he abandoned us. And so when it's my business and my money on the line, like you just show up and you do it, and that's how it works.
Wow. Talk about learning by fire.
Yeah.
So how big was this operation? How many plants or how many lights did you have?
At the time we started with 60 lights.
Oh, that's still pretty big.
Yeah. So it was small, but it was a good thing we kind of limped into it because, you know, you can make all your mistakes at a 60 light grow and it's not that big of a deal. But if you're, you know, a couple hundred lights, then it definitely makes a big difference.
You know, when you're first starting out, what comes first, the product and then the sale? Or I would imagine that you're out there trying to get shelf space immediately when you started the cultivation. Is it a kind of, because you don't know what the product's going to look like. You can't really give any samples.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a chicken or egg type of problem that you're trying to solve.
It's totally that, and and that's still a challenge today. Fortunately, the story is a bit different because we have our years of experience and our award-winning flower, and it's a little bit in our reputation, so people know of us, and it's a bit easier to sell. But still, we have to wait for test results. Oregon, we pretty much can't give samples, so it's very restricted in what we're able to do to sell a product, because you're right, it is based on of, well, I think it's going to be this or it might be that, and what buyer wants to buy on a hope and a dream. You want to buy an actual product, and that's the constant dilemma when you're selling flower. That's different from selling other CPG. Like if we were selling gummies or vapes or whatever that looks like, that's very different because there's some predictability to that. Whereas with flower, it's agriculture, so it's different every time. And even if you try to make it consistent, there's still stuff, and you can't predict lab results. You've just got to wait for the lab to come back with their results, and then it is what it is.
So do you sell at kind of, what is that called, where you're not really selling but you're just borrowing shelf space, or do you sell at a discount in the beginning just to get product out there?
Actually, in the beginning, it was so much easier because there were so few producers. Oregon's
Okay.
mistake has been that over time, the 9 years of doing this, there's been so many more licenses issued. But at the beginning, it was pretty easy. You show up with halfway decent flower, and prices were higher. We were getting twice as much per pound for less for a lower quality flower 8 years ago than we're getting today.
Wow.
So, so today we're growing much better quality, much higher volume, and getting about half the price.
I was going to ask you that, is you've been through the really good, and then now you're going through the price suppression. How have you navigated, or what has the business done to adapt to this new environment?
Well, I think that's where my business background really comes into play, and because I've done accounting for years. My undergrad was in accounting, so give me some numbers and we can make a spreadsheet and we can talk about it all day long. But if you don't know what your numbers are and you don't actually know what your cost of goods is, then it's hard to make decisions. And so what one of our superpowers is having data available and making decisions based on data. And so we really focus on our costs, and there's a limited number of things that drive cost of goods. There's payroll, there's rent, utilities, trimming, and those are the big ones. Everything else is pretty minor. And once you figure that out, then you can have some real conversations about what SOPs make sense and what processes make sense so that you can really drive costs. And I think that's one of the big differences where we're in Oregon and then also we're in New York now, and New York has not hit price compression. So people are still spending money like there's no tomorrow, just like woohoo and whoa, there's so much volume. But I come at it a bit more conservatively, like, okay, yes, today there's money, but you have to plan for 2 years from now, 18 months from now, when price compression is going to happen. You have to know what your costs are, get it dialed, and stay focused.
Has this experience in Oregon and now you're going into New York, are you a lot more cautious now on the overhead costs? Like just making sure that, hey, there's going to be a time that comes where bigger is not better.
It's always been our mantra, and that's the challenge with growth. Is one of the things I studied when I was working on my MBA was companies that have longevity and how companies grow and what the success metrics are for the ones who have succeeded versus the ones who have failed. And so I'm always mindful about how you scale effectively, and it is hard. It is so hard because you're absolutely right. If we had like my dream, I would love to have a full-time designer on staff. I would love to have a full-time person designing our packaging, managing our inventory, doing our social media. But those are non-deductible expenses, so it hits me directly in our tax bill if we do that. So what that means is that we just suck it up and do as much as we can ourselves, which is fine until it's not. So that's part of scaling, is at what point does it make sense to bring on another person and add this additional cost versus just either not doing it or doing it poorly to get by.
Yeah. So what made you guys decide, hey, we've been doing it in Oregon for so many years. Let's increase the complexity and go into a new state.
It's it started about 5 years ago. I was looking at the market 5 years ago, and after seeing a few cycles of the ups and downs every year, just kind of seeing the trajectory and knowing what was happening in the Oregon economy, it became really apparent to me that for actual real growth, we needed to extend beyond the state borders. And so, of course, the only way to do that legally within our regulated space is to set up a completely new operation. And we tried a couple other states. I started talking to people and building my network, but really quickly it became apparent that New York was where we wanted to be. I had a really good community, lots of connections, and we were able to find a manufacturing partner there that is fantastic. And so we were able to launch, and it's my hope is that by the end of the year, our New York business will be equal or greater to our Oregon business, and I think we should be able to get there.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
it's
So
kind of
did
great.
you, yeah, so are in New York, are you, you're going through, I think that's the better route is to, I forget what that word is, low capital growth.
Yeah, yeah, we have a licensing deal, so it's asset light. That's
Asset light, there you go.
yeah. So asset light expansion. So I'm not building another facility because that requires a lot of capital investment. And in New York, especially, licenses are hard to get and expensive. So, you're already in like that's a huge, huge investment. But so we're expanding asset light where I provide the packaging and the marketing and the IP. And then my business partner there, they handle all the manufacturing and sales and distribution.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's for me, that's a preferred way to grow. So where do you spend your time now? Do you spend your time in the New York
Everywhere.
market or in the Oregon market?
It's been so far about 1 week a month in New York. So, but a lot of my time is spent on New York. So it's, still doing what I need to do to manage the Oregon business. But because we have a good team that handles all the day-to-day stuff, I'm not quite as needed in Oregon. So I can focus my attention on our team in New York.
Yeah, New York's not a bad spot to be,
Yeah.
right? A lot of distractions there.
I don't, yeah. I mean, the last time I was there, I didn't get to see a show, which I was kind of sad about because I love Broadway and I love that excitement of being in a big city, but I was there to hustle and there to work. So you just got to focus and do
Well, I
it.
mean, there's always time in the
Yeah.
future, right?
Yeah.
So you mentioned something that I think is really valuable to dive into. Excuse me, in the software world, we have MVP, minimum viable product, and it's a little bit easier in our space. Excuse me, unless you're doing the asset light model in your space, because in our space, you talk to a bunch of prospects, you find out what their problem is, you validate whether or not, hey, if I do this, are you going to pay for my product? You create a minimum viable product, and there you go. In your space, you don't have that luxury. You have to, in your instance, buy a 25-acre farm, build a facility, invest all of this capital, and then start selling. Let's talk a little bit about kind of your experience in the Oregon market. You mentioned things were way better 9 years ago, and obviously in any mature market, there's going to be more and more and more supply, and the price compression just happens, and there's consolidation, and some businesses don't make it.
Yeah. It's it is real challenging, and to me this year feels really pivotal because a lot of businesses have gone out of business this year, especially on the cultivation and retail side. And it's an interesting conundrum because I think that the regulators have chosen to take a hands-off approach to this, and a lot of people in the industry wish that the regulators would kind of step in and pull back some of the licenses and allow for a process where licenses would be reduced. And, we don't want any of our friends or colleagues to go out of business because you don't wish, I don't want to wish that on anybody. That's heartbreaking, and it's people have invested their life savings. But the reality is that the Oregon consumer base is not large enough to consume all the products that are being grown here. I did the math about a year ago, and there is enough canopy space licensed in Oregon to supply the entire country.
Wow.
So it just doesn't math. Like, you just do the basic back of the envelope math, and the system that has been created is not a system that's setting anybody up for success.
And then now you're seeing the market just normalize, right? And hopefully it can happen faster, or it can happen in a disastrous wildfire where the good trees survive.
Yeah.
You're gonna see a bunch of trees burned.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it feels like sometimes. And it's hard, but it's one of these things where I think, you were talking a little bit before about some of the values, and I think that if you have to be able to pivot and to be able to not be stuck, you have to constantly learn and constantly grow and be humble about what you don't know. And that's hard for a lot of people who come at this like, I know how to do this. I've been doing this for 20 years. And it's like, if you can't adapt, then that's fine. But I'm going to adapt and I'm going to get better.
Yeah. I'm sure that you face a lot of hurdles in just being a cultivator in Oregon. When I found out that you've been doing this for 9 years, there were so many thoughts that came through my head. Like, she's been through a lot.
Yeah.
Right? Ups and downs. What were some of the big challenges that you've had to face as a business, and how did you guys navigate around that?
So the biggest thing, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, was staff changes and really finding the right fit for key staff. And this was one of my biggest learnings personally, in that I kept buying this dream of, next month it's going to be better. Oh, this is the best crop ever. Oh, this is so awesome. So it's constantly being told a story without it actually getting better. And it was easy for me because I want to believe the best in people to get sucked into that. And it was a huge learning as a leader to in fact, like, no, actually we should have parted ways years ago, because this is not actually getting better and it's not actually working. And so that, looking back, if we would have made those changes 2 or 3 years ago, it would have made such huge differences on our bottom line. But I think that, if there's good that we're going to take out of it, it's that I now recognize that pattern and know that when it's time to let somebody go, it's time to let somebody go, and just be ready for that. So it's tough, but it's a good lesson.
That is such an entrepreneur journey. Mm-hmm. Unless you're a solopreneur, and it's difficult because these are people's lives, and you become friends. I always get reminded on Elon Musk's quote, which is, so I listen to a lot of biographies, right? Biographies of people that have grown in scale, and this is very extreme, by the way, and it's not normal, but his approach is he doesn't ever make friends at work, and it's hard not to. If you spend so much time with an individual, you naturally become friends, because you start making decisions that are best for the relationship versus for the business. And that one struck me. I'm like, every entrepreneur goes through that.
Yep. Yeah. Especially when you're on a small team. And I want to give people second chances. I want to give opportunities. So it's like, hey, do you want to go to a class? Or, hey, can we do this? And then after a time, I realized, no, they never actually showed any interest in getting better. And no, there was actually never acknowledgement that improvements needed to make. I was like, oh, okay, it's obvious now. I should have picked up on this a long time ago, but I didn't.
So now have you How has I mean, with your accounting background, you probably dialed this in. Are there leading indicators that you look at on how well the business is doing outside of just the bottom line?
The biggest the biggest metric we look at every month is yield. I want to know how many pounds of A-bud we produced every month. And at the end of the day, we have so much data and we track so many things, and we've talked about like looking at things from a different lens, but at the end of the day, yield is the only thing that matters.
Yeah, that's true. It's you guys are farmers. You right? How much did we crop?
Yes.
How do you measure the quality? I guess you send it to a lab and it comes back and you kind of figure that out.
So quality is hard because it's subjective. And so when you ask how do you measure quality, those two words don't even really go together. I would say, how do you judge quality, or how do you like figure out what you think quality is? But yes, so there certainly are lab tests, but quality, and this conversation we have all the time in the farm, is quality is not THC score. My like as a non-cultivator, what I've come to understand is that like 75% of the THC score is genetic, and then the remaining 25% is environmental and how well you grew it. But if something is going to test at 15%, it's just you might be able to get it to 20%, but it's never going to be a 25 or 30%.
Yeah.
And so measuring quality it doesn't work like that. It's really about what does it look like and what does the market think? And it's different. And so it's one of these interesting things because there's cycles to what genetics people like. So they might like something really gassy. That might be in vogue for 6 months, and then they'll move to something that smells like a runce, and then that'll be all what's in vogue. And figuring out what the sales team can move versus what we like is a constant push and pull.
That's what I was going to ask you is how do you decide what to grow and how long do you stick with a strain?
I wish there were better answers, but this is constantly the discussion. This is what we do to try to improve and to get better. And if my cultivation team had their way, we would have 5 strains that we grew the same 5 strains over and over and over, and they would really hone their craft and get good at those. But sadly, the market gets bored, or they're like, oh, yeah, we saw that last month. Do you have anything else? And so there's this constant need for something new and something fresh. And it's a balancing act between the sales team always hearing from customers of, hey, what do you have new? What do you got for me this month? Versus patients, like medical patients, who kind of want some consistency. And also the cultivation team wants some consistency so that they're not figuring things out new every time. So there isn't one right answer. It's a fluid flow state.
Do you find, I mean, now that you're in 2 different markets, what is your approach in Oregon is it any different than your approach in New York?
It's so different. It's like running 2 completely separate businesses. In Oregon, our primary product is bulk flower. So we sell bulk flower every day. And because we're an indoor cultivator, we have to focus on quality so we know how to grow the best and all of that. But in New York, because we're not doing the cultivation, we're partners, or not partners, but we're colleagues, and we have the cultivation team as part of the supply chain. But we're not selling flower. We're selling products. So we sell pre-rolls, infused pre-rolls, and vapes. So it's very much on the CPG side of things. Partly because that's the way the New York market is, but also because I don't feel comfortable saying we've got really top quality indoor flower in Oregon and then, hey, we've got great product, but it's greenhouse and may not always be the most consistent in New York. So it was hard figuring out how one brand cohesively fits into those 2 paradigms. So it's been a juggling act, but I think we've nailed it.
Wow, I never really thought of that. That's so true. Because you guys have an identity of winning awards with your flower.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't really replicate that unless you're the ones that are growing in New York as well.
Exactly. And yeah, so from a branding journey, it was really interesting. It took us about a year to figure that out, like have all that conversation of teasing apart the brand and what we stand for from the mechanics of what happens at the farm in Oregon.
So how do you choose what products to back in New York? What was that process like on, okay, well, I mean, essentially you guys are a brand, but you guys are a product company, and
Yeah.
that's a tough decision. It's a big decision, I would say.
Yeah. So what we did is we leaned on our experience here in Oregon. So our packaged product here in Oregon is pre-rolls. And so we do know how to sell pre-rolls. We have some experience in the market. And so we're like, you know what? Let's do pre-rolls. We know how that works. We've got some good experience. And it actually makes sense. It's like part of the brand story that translates from market to market. And so we picked, working with my partner out there, we picked 3 different strains. We got some exclusivity on their menu for those 3 strains and went for it.
Oh, wow. Do you find the market itself different too, the consumer market in New York? Because New York is a relatively new recreational market, but it's an old market.
Yeah,
They know they've been around the block.
Exactly. Yeah, it is very different. Oregon's CPG, so like vapes and brownies and gummies, and they're just so cheap. And that's why we don't do them. That's why we don't offer that form factor here in Oregon. It's because there are really big companies who have been doing this a long time and have their costs down really low. And it just doesn't make sense to have a craft brand come in and, hey, we're going to make the latest, I don't know, beverage, and it's going to be so great and wonderful. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of money to break into a new form factor like that. So in Oregon, we stick to flower and pre-rolls, and that's just what we do. Even infused pre-rolls, we don't do them because we ran the cost a couple of years ago, and by the time we use our flower, had somebody extract our trim so that it was the same extract with the same flower, make it for us, our costs would be so high that we're not competitive in the market. And so if there's no money in it, why would we do it?
Yeah.
But now that we've learned all of that, we took those learnings to New York and were able to craft some carefully chosen products that fit into categories on the shelf. The other thing on that is because we're very data focused, we looked at a lot of data to figure out what products we're selling and what gaps we thought that there might be in the New York market.
Are you distributed all across the state?
Yeah, yeah. We're in over 100, probably 120 stores, all the way from Syracuse all the way down to Long Island.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So essentially you started another business.
Yeah, totally. It's exactly what it is.
Same brand, but it's a completely different business.
Yeah, and it has to be. I mean, both for compliance reasons, because, our Oregon business, we have our license and everything stays within the borders of our state. And then New York, everything, we have a brand license for New York. Everything has to stay there. So we have to do it, keep it separate.
I forgot to ask you this. Where did the name Alibi come from?
So it's interesting. We brainstormed this name several years ago, but the definition of alibi, it's usually used in a legal connotation, but it really just means being somewhere else. And for us, that's what cannabis brings, is takes you out of maybe the struggles that you have today. Maybe you're fighting with your partner. Maybe you're frustrated with this or that, whatever it is, and just takes you to a moment, a different place where there's some peace, where there's some joy, where there's some beauty. Just enjoy it, and then try to integrate that with your life. So that's really what Alibi all is about, is finding that beautiful space that we can all be together.
Oh, that's beautiful. And how did you come up with the branding?
I spotted this through, there's an artist in LA, and she's done a bunch of other similar art, and she posted this one, and she's like, hey guys, this is sneak preview. This is what's coming out next week. And I saw it. I called her up. I'm like, Lisa, let's talk. I love that image. I want it. So we, yeah, we bought it from her and are just so thrilled that we were able to work with her and create an artistic, it's kind of edgy, it's a sexy fairy. Not a whole lot of people are pushing the envelope that far, but it's part of that alibi, right? Of being somewhere else and this beautiful butterfly that is maybe stuck inside that needs to escape and just let it fly free. And that's what cannabis does.
Marianne, I have to ask you this. As a cultivator, when you probably smoke so many different types of flowers, what goes through your mind when you're smoking flower, yours or anybody else's? And how do you grade, is this good or is this bad?
Ooh, that's a tough one. So I don't ever put myself out as being a flower connoisseur. And the reason for that is because I like to enjoy every moment. It's not I don't want to be sitting here picking it apart. So like if we were to go out to dinner and I'm going to order my whatever, I want to enjoy that because I'm here in this moment, I'm present. This is what we're doing together. And if I come at it with an attitude of, oh, it's got parsley on it, or oh, this isn't cooked exactly the way I want to, or oh, it's like that's just an approach to life that I don't choose to approach life to that way. I want to come at it with looking for joy and looking for abundance, and so so I enjoy every experience. I'll put it that way.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, my relationship with smoking weed has changed so much throughout the years. It has evolved from in my teenage years where you you probably smoke more than what you should,
Yeah.
and to now where I had an epiphany once where I was serving the plant. I was just really serving the plant, and I was really dependent on it. To now where the plant serves me and enhances my life. So I've never really cared much about what anything tastes like. It's just more on how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do have favorite strains.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that um, your your struggles of creating different strains. For me, I'm the complete opposite. I want the exact same strain all the time.
Yeah.
I have my favorite one. Do you guys have it? You guys don't have it. Oh, what gives you the same effect?
Yeah. Yeah, so I wish that buyers in shops had that same idea that you do because we hear that from customers that they have their favorite strain. They want like in New York, it's crazy to me. Over what a quarter to a third of flower sales are Blue Dream. We couldn't sell Blue Dream to save our lives in Oregon, but it is the most popular strain in New York. But if you like Blue Dream and that's what fits your needs, you want Blue Dream. And the buyers here in Oregon don't operate that way. And I do think it's a mismatch. I think it's a mismatch of that is failing to serve the customer.
Yeah, it's fascinating though how there are the culture of consumption is so different. I mean, obviously, it's thousands of kilometers or miles apart, but it's always fascinating to me. And that's why when you've started the other side of the country to extend your brand, you've come at it with very unique perspective.
Yeah, we try to. And that's so one area specifically that we've been able to bring our learnings is that in Oregon, our pre-roll packs, having been doing them for several years, we found that customers really like a variety. So we launched a variety pack, it was maybe a year and a half ago. And so they get a couple different strains, two or three different strains in the same pack. One for now, one for later, or one for the evening, one for the morning, whatever it is that you're looking for. And virtually nobody is doing that in New York. So I felt pretty lucky when we were able to launch our variety pack about 6 weeks ago, and it's just taken off because people are excited about that. So I think so yes, I mean we have some really cool product, and I think that we're going to be able to gain some market share because of being a first mover, but also it compresses that horizon of product development because what took us 5 years to figure out in Oregon, now we made happen in New York in 6 months.
Yeah.
And So it's a little bit scary because the acceleration seems like it's getting faster and faster. But then also that's part of the business.
Yeah. So tell me, is there anything that you're coming out with in the near future that you want to share?
So last week we just launched a seasonal vape in New York. I'm pretty excited about it. It's a spiced apple vape. We wanted to do something in New York that really connected with the local culture and represented what the state is to people. And really it's fall and autumn and the spiced apple and the harvest and apple cider and all of that. So we crafted an apple cider. So it's apples and cinnamon and clove, all of those spices, and call it spiced apple. And that's our product that we just launched. I'm pretty excited about it. We've gotten some really great reviews, and we're excited to continue to grow that.
Oh, I love that. I love that that's coming out in our industry. It reminds me of, you go to Starbucks for their pumpkin latte.
Exactly.
Right? And that's the fall.
Yep.
It just smells like fall, right?
That's it, yeah. And I think the cannabis, I don't know, I think it's a cool thing is to have these seasonal products. I think it's good to have both the evergreen products and the seasonal products.
Mm-hmm. Marianne, before I let you go, how can our listeners find you?
I'm pretty easy to find on Instagram. We're at alibi.ny and alibi.oregon, and our website is alibi.co.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. It's been great chatting, Tommy.
Thanks for listening to the KayaCast podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast in your favorite podcast app or visit our website to access the full archive of episodes from the show.